Hi everyone, this is Aaron and I'm here today with Pastor Matt Powell. Pastor Matt, we received a question and this person wants to know, how do you avoid being burned out when serving in ministry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when it comes to being burnt out and serving in ministry, it's hard because being burnt out is always an issue of the heart. But it's not just an issue of the heart. I think sometimes we do physically at times do feel tired and we do feel as if we are just physically burnt out. But I think if we're addressing more of a spiritual aspect, one of the ways in which we can guard ourselves in being burnt out in ministry is really to learn to depend upon God and draw our strength from Him. For example, if you go all throughout the book of 2 Corinthians, for that matter, Paul, he is a person who could be burnt out from ministry. I think he deserves to be burnt out in ministry. He's working with a church that is, for lack of a better term, not a good church. And yet, throughout 2 Corinthians, he always reminds them that he draws his strength and his power from God. And so I think with that in mind, as long as we arm ourselves with that way of thinking, that is what is going to help us to not be burnt out in ministry, at least in a spiritual sense. That's going to help us to love people more. That's going to help us to love God more and to love what He wants of us more so in ministry. I think, though, that there is a physical sense in which when we do get burnt out in ministry, it really is just a practical issue of getting enough rest. I would say that the reason why people don't rest enough in ministry as it is because they believe and think that everything depends on them. And so they work hard and they work almost tirelessly to minister, not knowing that they're dispensable, not knowing that they are disposable, not knowing that God can use up other people. And so I think it's important that everybody in ministry make sure they rest, to make sure that they take some time and spend before God and just rest, really. I know oftentimes people say things like, well, you can rest when you're dead, but that's just not practical. That's just not helpful at all. I think I'm reminded of Jesus Christ himself. I think if you look particularly in Mark chapter 6, this is the section of scripture in which Jesus, he sends out the 12 apostles. And it's interesting what Jesus says to them before he does the feeding of the 5,000. And he says to them, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while. And so I think even Jesus himself, he recognizes the need to rest. He recognizes the need to take a break and take a retreat. So I think physically speaking, the most practical way we can guard ourselves against burnout is to make sure that we take the words of Jesus seriously, come away for a little while, and rest before God. Now, obviously, in Mark chapter 6, more than that just happens. The crowd comes and Jesus feeds them. But the principle is still there. Jesus intends for them first to rest. It was only as a matter of circumstances that the crowds came and therefore they couldn't rest. But He intends for them to rest.
Thanks, Pastor Matt, and thank you everyone for listening. Feel free to ask us all of your service and ministry questions or check out our archive at unicoyquestions.tumblr.com. Thanks. See you soon.